Hi guys, it's Blakey, and we are live. Whew, I am so full. Had a spaghetti dinner tonight, so it was very filling, very time consuming to make, and man, am I full right now. So if I suddenly nod off taking out, just beep at me or something. How about that? But that's the game plan for today. We'll see who's going to be on tonight and see what's going to be the topic of discussion. Hello, Worm Wrangler. Welcome to the channel again. 2020, good evening. Gray Wolf, hello. Tiny Titan, awesome. You made it. The Silver Wolf that I posted yesterday done really good. I think I've touched base with a lot of people, letting them understand how you can have all kinds of problems and keep going. You just got to stay focused on it and keep moving forward. Justin, good evening. Elvin, Hiram, Dr. Robert, hello. Kenneth, hello. Tony York, good evening. Russell, Gray Wolf. Do we discuss mobility by vehicle at all? We can. Sal, good evening. Jeff, depending on where you're at is what kind of vehicle you're going to need anyway. But ATV, motorcycles, bicycles, all are common now in the back country, as well as four-wheel drive pickup trucks, Jeeps, and etc. And it's just how deep you want to go in there, how far you want to go. And to me, there is the school of I want to hike. And like I said, I see them as two kinds. One that trying to make miles and beat time, and one that's out there enjoying nature. Then there is the ones that are car campers. And of those, you will have a section that are four-wheel drive, want to go way back in there, where they ain't no road. You're just kind of cutting along fire lanes and stuff like that, trying to get in there. And that's perfectly viable. Then there's people that want to go back on dirt bikes or ATVs and things like that. Perfectly viable. Then people want to use bicycles. Horseback is a form of camping. Horse and pack mules get back in there to the way back. So there's all kinds of mobility to get you back there. The question is just how far back you want to go and how much effort you want to put into it. Jeff, hello. Buckeye 80. Buckeye, yes, you're going to have trouble finding, the WSM, the short magnums. When they came out, man, that was going to be the greatest thing in the world. 300, the 308, all of that. And they real quickly, went away to where today, that's in the beginning of hunting season, you can go into the pawn shops here in the South, and you'll find Remington and big name guns sitting there, and it's a 300 Winchester Magnum, short mag. And such 243 short mag, 308 short mag. And the price on the gun to be really good because a box of ammo is ridiculous for it. And if you're not hand loading, forget it. It's just too expensive a cartridge to shoot. You can pick up a full size 300 or a full size 270 or 308 or whatever and get ammo just about any place. Finding WSM ammo it was an experiment that really didn't fly that well. Kyle, good evening. Beast of Bray Road, good evening. Hey, yeah, Gray Wolf. Snow dogs are great in your neck of the woods. Joe Healy, good evening, New Hampshire. Jonathan Frisbee in the house. Hello, brother. Good evening, Azrael. Gordon, hello. Rewatch last week's live. Any chance you could include the live chat going forward? Not exactly know what you're talking about there, how to include it. If you're wanting to know, no, that's not what you're asking. I'm not sure, to be honest. Blackie is not that computer savvy, I'll tell you right now. Red Sorghum, good evening to Commie, California. Hello. Gordon, hello. Silvershire, hello. Praise Razor, good evening. Buckeye, yeah, $90 a box. You 4 boxes of ammo, you can buy the gun in. Everybody I know has gotten rid of those calibers for that very reason. A guy, is a 35 caliber good for deer hunting? Yes, like the 35 Remington stuff, perfectly adequate. And 38 55, 355. There's a bunch of those 35 caliber and stuff like that. 35 will lean, very adequate, even to elk. They sure can. It's just, again, you're probably going to have to hunt ammo or do some hand loading, depending on where you're at. Some of these calibers are much more common in certain parts of the country. Like 35 Remington is more common up in Maine and stuff like that. Use it for a bear cartridge up there. Very difficult to find in Alabama. Very few people down here even know what it is. Yeah, Russell, canoeing is my favorite way to. If I'm not going to walk, I love to canoe. And also, Justin, don't forget the 855. Grateful Ed, hello to Pittsburgh. Tony York, hello. Yeah, they run some sort of thing. Snapper, good evening. Hello there. Hadn't heard from you in a while. Keel, hello. Kyle, good evening. Oh, Worm Wrangler. Okay, I look on my side and see if I can make sure those are available. When we get done with this one, I'll go back and look. I haven't changed any of the settings. However, let me go back, and if necessary, I'll get somebody that knows more than me to kind of walk me through it. But if I can turn them on, I will. Okay, for y'all to see. Gray Wolf, need a 61 cylinder, and I can't find one in stock anymore. Are you talking, Gray Wolf? You talking about a 61 Navy? The 51, 61 Navies are exactly the same cylinders. They interchange. There is no difference between them. The only thing they changed between the 51 and the 61 was the way the barrel is, that fluid shape and etc. But a 61 36 caliber and a 51 36 caliber Navy, it's exactly the same. A good reference to have when you're doing cabin ball stuff is get a Dixie Gun Works catalog, because they'll list all the stuff and you can look at the part number and you'll real quick figure out it's exactly the same part for and even the Dance Brothers 36 is a same exact part number for the cylinder because it's the same cylinder. So you can a 51 Navy cylinder is the same cylinder. You go right on the sheet. Red sorghum, yeah. I tried a kayak this past year. Got in that thing, puddle ducked around about 20 minutes. Had to roll out of it because I couldn't get in and out of it. I can get in and out of a canoe, because you go forward and get your arms up on the gunnels and you stand up and step out. But I couldn't do that on that kayak. There was nothing to do that with. You're kind of sitting flat on the ground, cross-legged in that thing, with your legs straight out, and there was no way to get out of it other than just plop in the water. So I sold it that day. Mr. Steve was handing there. I said, how would you like a kayak for your granddaughter? $100, it's yours. It's a 300 something kayak. He, of course, went, yeah. So we loaded that puppy up. Eddie Lewis, hello. Dark Meta, doing good. Mitch, it is. I think it starts it either has started or it starts this weekend here in Alabama. Small game of rabbit, squirrel, possum, and a few other things is already in. It's so hot down here, we don't really start squirrel hunting until the first frost because they'll have parasites and stuff, and we wait till then. After the first frost, when I start thinking about it. Planet, Wisconsin. I hear you. The M65 field jacket is outstanding. You just got to find one of the surpluses that if you want for a real one, which the modern replicas that are made are not bad. But you got to remember, a lot of these old 65s are pushing 70 years old. So yeah, finding one that's still in good shape, that wasn't some skinny little kid. You know, the guys in Vietnam weighed about like 100 pounds. So you got to find, if you can find a Navy one, and they made them for the Navy that was for fat cooks or Air Force cooks. Yeah, you can get a bigger one, but it's hard to find them. Gordon, Blackie, do you prefer a lantern bottle or standard 20-pound tank? Usually for lanterns like that, propane lanterns, I use the bottles. Now, you can get the refiller that you put on the 20-pound tank, turn it upside down, and you can screw that green bottle, that small bottle, back into it to recharge it. So you can still use them in sequence, but have that hose to drag it around. I mean, when you put the barbecue tank and the barbecue hose on it, great for being on a deck or someplace I'm not moving a lot. But for mobility, I prefer to be able to pick them up, move a lantern around. Just me. When collecting some spare parts for a Pieta 58, what wears out most, things like that? You want 2 or 3 trigger springs. Go ahead and get a hand and match it. So you take a new one and line it up, maybe make it file to fit exactly the same as the original, and have one made up because that handspring may snap. Other than that, it's pretty robust. You know, very few parts to go bad. Good evening, Bear. Yeah, JB, I saw that too, where he's talking about is it back in production. I have seen some caps pop up on a couple of sites a little bit. So, like I said, they said they were going to do them in batches, and they were going to be doing them in June and July. So now they're hitting the market for hunting season. So if you want to get caps, now's the time to make a purchase, because probably when hunting season is over, there won't be no more caps until next year. Metal Reaper, hello. Red Sorghum, you can squirrel hunt with one of the 22 caliber pellet guns. Walmart sells the 22 caliber pellet guns around 110 bucks or something like that. And the 22 caliber pellet is leaving the barrel at 950 feet per second. The 22 short out of a standard rifle is 750 feet per second. So you basically got a 22 long in power, and you can hunt squirrel that up close. So yeah, and you get a whole 10 500 rounds for like 12 bucks. So hey, you know, it's a cheaper way to save the bullets for the real need and use the air gun to put them out of the trees and the pecan trees and stuff like that. Bushcraft with the preacher, good evening. Planet, Wisconsin. Any Bigfoot stories about being out in the rough? I've seen and heard strange things. Now, I cannot say that is absolutely. I think that if such a creature exists, I could believe it in the western part of the United States. I could believe it in Canada or Alaska, places where they're not people for miles and miles and miles. I could halfway. But at the same time, on the East Coast and stuff, as densely populated as we are, as many years as we hunted for a living in the Great Depression, where every tree had a redneck looking for something to eat. If they was here, we'd have done started harvesting them suckers. We'd have recipes. But I could see it out in the middle of nowhere. And I've told this before, when me and my wife got married 33 or so years ago, and we went on our honeymoon, and we ended up at the Smithsonian after we'd done 11 states in a big loop. But we got to the Smithsonian, the Museum of Natural History, and going from display area to display area, you know, they went through little hallways and stuff like that. And there's, at one point, you come into a room and you're stepping through a set of jaws of a megalodon, that the gap between the teeth was 7.5 feet. And that was a walk in, you know. Well, you started down this little thing. At the very end of it was a Bigfoot in a glass case. Over here to the right was all these bones, and on the left was an articulated big stuffed animal type thing, stuff, representation. And it had a plaque that said, "This is not a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. This is an Australopithecus gigantus, commonly called a rock ape, that existed in North America, Europe, and Asia, but went extinct 10,000 years ago." Now, as a little boy in Alabama who was fascinated by dinosaurs and woolly mammoths and all kinds of stuff, I clearly remember in school us having education on this where we showed about things like that. I do not recall them ever mentioning a great ape in North America. I would have remembered that, but they didn't. But yet, here at the Smithsonian, in like an 8-foot tall case with a big Wookiee, and over here right are actual bones from it, detailing where these bones were multiple types that were found all over the world, and yet we hear about Yetis and everything else, and they admit such a creature existed. You can look it up, it existed, but it went extinct 10,000 years ago. And y'all are sure. So like I said, if such a creature does still exist in North America, I would be halfway believing it could be out there in them places, because it is so wide open, so remote. But being in Tallahassee, Florida, or whatever, But then again, if you'll do a search, you'll find gorilla in Alabama. We've got 2 silverback gorillas walking around in Alabama. They escaped out of a tourist attraction out of Florida when a hurricane tore it up several years ago, and they've been spotted in Alabama, in my area and further north, walking around, a full African silverback gorilla. So, we had a ostrich farm get tore up by a tornado, and we had wild ostriches running around the woods for years down here. So, you never know what you're going to come across in the woods. You hunt a Bigfoot and suddenly an ostrich steps up in front of you. You're in more danger from that ostrich, So there's stuff out there. And one of my favorite quotes, "I am both terrified and delighted to know that there are things out there that we have not yet fully understood and explained away. There is still wilderness out there." So back to you. Russell, have you ever had any big cat encounters in Alabama? I have seen a mountain lion. I was hanging in my hammock on a friend of mine's land and watched full adult mountain lion go about 30 yards from me, going through a planted pines. He didn't notice me. I've seen bobcats up close, big bobcats. I've heard things scream down in the swamps before that didn't sound like a cat and didn't sound like it straight that bad. It sounded like some sort of cat, but I've heard a mountain lion and I have heard bobcats many times. And whatever this was screaming wasn't. And so, like I said, if you do a little research, you'll find out that we had jaguar in Alabama. Yeah, they're in Mexico. Yeah, well, the Indians that were here in Alabama in the 1700s were called Muskogee. They'd come out of northern Mexico, whenever the conquistadors had conquered the Aztecs, they were on the northern part of their empire and they left. They were a slave race. They had been conquered by the Aztecs and they kept them for, whatever slaves. And so they escaped and they went north into Arkansas. This is the book that I've read by the Creek Nation, the Muskogee Nation, their history. They moved into Arkansas in the 1500s into the caves there, and then moved their way east and conquered the indigenous tribes here and became the Muskogee Nation, which we call Creek Nation. So by the late 1600s, early 1700s, they were here. So they came from Mexico. And the symbol of strength, virility, masculinity was a jaguar to them. And so they brought them with them. That was like a pet for a chief or a shaman. We knew what a mountain lion was. And that one, we either call it, depending if you're in the French areas like Mobile, Western, you said it was a puma or cougar, French. If you were from the eastern side, you said mountain lion. But we call Black Panther was different because it was black on black. Well, that's a jaguar. And if you go look at the book of tracks and scat, it lists how they have found so many adult jaguar in the mountains of Arizona in modern day that they think they've migrated in there. They're just waiting to find kittens to say they're breeding there. Why not? You know, I've seen some big tracks. You know, a good friend of mine had got a bunch of land, and we had gone down there and started walking. And he's not much of an outdoors type, so he'd asked me to come down and us walk the perimeter of his land and kind of mark it, you know. And so we did, and we got into a real thicket right above this pond down there. And this circle was like almost the size of a double bed. And it's where he had grabbed, you know how a cat will take a poop and sit there and drag up? That's what it had done. And so I dug down in the dirt and came up with a cat poop about that big, and it was all black. That tells you it's a cat because it's blood, because cats are true carnivores. He don't eat nothing but meat, basically. And it was nothing but fur and that. There was no seeds in it, nothing else. And I broke it apart and looked at it. Of course, he's trying not to pick his lunch. You know, it's get over it. It's dry. And but you can tell a lot by how they're eating it. So this is obviously a cat, and this is a big cat, because from right here I could barely reach out as far as that thing was reaching and dragging back. So it would have to have arms at length my reach. This is a full grown adult mountain lion, and to my knowledge, he's never been back on going around his land since. He stays at his house. He's called me up a couple times and want to know would I be willing to come over and do such and such, and I go, okay. And we get there, and I get the idea he ain't walking down in the woods unless there's somebody with a gun. And he's not a gun type person. So Jennifer, good evening. Parlez-vous de français? For many years, I did cours de bois as a French up here at Fort Toulouse at Montgomery, Alabama, which was when the French came in to Mobile and set up. From there, they went from there and founded New Orleans, and so Alabama was French at that time. It was part of the Indian nation, but the Indians had invited the French, and so Fort Toulouse up there. And I was a reenactor up there for several years as part of their thing with the fort and all like that. And you had to learn commands in French. So when we were doing a display for the public, you know, order of arms and everything else, all commands were in French. And actually, it was Cajun French, because the Cajuns still speak the French of the 1700s, but modern French is different. And every year when they would have their big event, the Marine unit that had been stationed there, the descendant of that unit, it's still in the French Marines, that unit that had been stationed at Fort Toulouse in the 1700s would send an officer over for a ceremony that they would do there, because this was their posting. This was the birth of their regiment or whatever over there. And so he'd come over and he would be speaking in regular French because they got cameras going. And then the commander who was doing the stuff, he spoke the Cajun French that was correct for here. He doesn't speak modern French. And the two could not carry on a conversation other than just basic stuff because French is so different today. So yeah, I am not a French speaker. I can fake it. That's about it. Diane, good evening. Thank you very much. I'm doing okay. But 112, good evening to Rome, Georgia. Oh, cool, Gray Wolf. Good luck. Yeah. Yeah, sport mobile. That is the beauty of the cats. The big cats are very elusive, super aware of their environment. And my grandfather told me when I was a boy, he said, the only way you're ever going to see a cat is you're still not moving, and it's at a distance moving across. Because if the cat ever detects you, you'll never see him. You got to be still and you just see him. And when I saw him, I was hanging silently in a hammock when I saw him trot by. He was about 30, 40 yards from me, but it was plain and obvious, you know. It's kind of a little brushy and it's planted pine, so it's wide open down there at Pine Straw. And I could see him just as clear as day walking right through it. And as my grandfather said, if you ever turn around and there's a big cat, you were the target, because cats always attack from the back. They go for the base of the neck. They want to bite down, do claw bite, and try to sever your spine. That's their favorite attack. So cats go for the neck, canines go for the throat. Mitch, Blackie, what's the biggest animal you ever went hunting for? And weighed about an 800-pound hog. Russian boar. I went with a good friend of mine. He had a dog tore up pretty bad that he loved a lot, and the dog eventually died. And he said, I want to get this bastard. And so me and him went in there, and we went looking, and we found that big boar. And I had a 870 tactical shotgun pump with a 10-round capacity magazine on it, and I was pumping buckshot and slug into it as hard and as fast as I could. It was coming right at us, and I opened up, and I ran empty and had to jump in the air for it to go under me. He piled up about 40 yards out, but every hit was a good hit, but it kept coming. You know, they are tanks. Gray Wolf Creek. Jeff Hansen, good evening. Yeah, they love to grab and go for the neck, back of the head, something like that, twist and hold. If you control the head, you control the body. Striker, good evening. Thanks for coming in. Red sorghum, honestly, that wasn't as scared. You know, I've had gone down to the water's edge and gonna fill up something to come out of a bowl of water, right? And it being a little bit bright, and so the reflection on the water means you can't see in the water. Okay, so I've walked down to the place that we got water the day before. I bend down, I reach out, dip the canteen into it, the canteen cup, get water, and then a cloud over the sun. And when it did, you could see into the water, and I had about a 16-foot alligator about that far in front of me. His head was that broad. Clearly see the teeth. He's sitting there waiting for something to come down to get water. And I was able to calmly go back up and not trigger him. If I had splashed or whatever, he'd come for me. So that was more scary to me, because you're already squatting down. You've lost your mobility. You're in a roll situation, and you're facing a dinosaur with teeth that can lunge 10 feet straight out once he takes off. He's cocked and locked, ready to go. Once he decides to come forward, that mouth will open, launches like a rocket. They'll come clean out of the water. Those make me nervous. Bear, bobcat, mountain lion don't. In many ways, the cats are kind of cowardly. They only want to attack you one way. You know, they don't want to fight with you. They want to come at you from the back. So as long as you, in fact, if you go at him, he'll probably bow up and run. You know, he'll scream like hell, but he'll take off just like a house cat. Bobcat's the same way. If he has an exit, now don't have one cornered where he can't go nowhere, because then he's got no choice but to climb you like a gum tree. But he's got an option. He's going to run rather than fight, if at all possible. Bears, pretty much they're going to circle around as long as you leave them alone. You know, they're not that aggressive down here where I'm at. But at the same time, gators, that's the scary one, because it's like a landmine. You don't, nice flat water, there ain't nothing wrong here, and you step, and that was the trigger he wanted. So, yeah, that's the scary one to me. when we went and canoed the Delta right above Mobile in Grouch. And there was multiple times you'd look down in the water, you'd have an alligator bigger than the canoe, and you're just gliding over. And he's that far under you. If he spins around or whatever, you're going for a swim with him. And so it was an interesting week down in the swamps. I put it that way. Blackie, do you know any way to soften a snake hide after tanning it? I have tanned so few, to be honest, and I always used antifreeze to tan mine, and they were kind of flexible. I was going to make a wall hanging or something like that. I'm just not that versed in how to make it real soft. Because the scales, it's how stiff those scales was, what kind of snake, how old it was, how thick the scales. It's kind of like our fingernails. It's never going to be like ribbon. It's always going to be like a bicycle chain, you know. Randy Brown, glad you're out there. Glad, at least you got some rain. We'll be seeing you in Ohio. Good. Claymore Steel, good morning. I was laying on the ground pounding thing one time, and I had a coon come up and start trying, the button on top of the knot on top of the boonie hat. I'd pull my boonie hat on my face, and you had the lanyard up there and had the little knot on the top of it. And he got a hold of that, went to pulling it, and pulled my boonie hat off one time because he thought he'd found him something to eat, I guess. Lucky, I'm fixing up an old 45 caliber long rifle with rough bore. I will get good patches for some shots, then get burnt up or torn patches for others. With good, then bad, actually. Any ideas? Try going down to a slightly smaller diameter ball. 45 caliber should be 440 ball. Try going to a thicker patch. We used to go to the Goodwill and get old blue jeans that's kind of worn a little thin and cut them up, make patches out of them, real soft. They're almost like flannel. And the thicker patch will do it. Sounds like you've got a rough spot. You're getting fouling build up on that, and it's tearing the patch. So you may try clean the bore real good. Take a you're gonna laugh, but it works. Take a bore brush with a little bit of fine steel wool on it, and put Crest toothpaste on it. Crest toothpaste is a lapping compound, by the way, and lap the bore up and down about 50 strokes with that. Then use hot water and wash it out. Crest will dissolve and come out. Clean it and everything. Grease the bore before you start shooting. Run a wet patch with a good bore lube, like Crisco or something, up and down on it, and then shoot. If you're still getting torn patches, go to a thicker patch, because whatever it is there, and it's just going to be there, and you're just going to have a patch strong enough not to tear when it hits it. Because when it tears, it loses pressure, and there it goes. Hello, Donald. How you doing? Dave Grimes, hello. Gravel's correct. You can do that. Usually, I've done both of them. I've had valve grinding compound stuff, but I've told people use Crest toothpaste and a little bit of fine steel wool does the same job, and it's cheaper to get. Oh boy, you got a 6-foot stuffed iguana you want to flatten out. That's going to be a tough one. If you find somebody around there that actually does taxidermy, if you can make it, you can unmake it. And I've had a friend before that had a deer mount that he wanted to take that mount and take that deer off, leave the antlers, but put fresh hide on it, because the hide that was there had got singed pretty bad. They had a candle catch fire, and heat went up and skin it singed the fur. So I want to know if they could do it. And any of the people do taxidermy. I won't say topography. Taxidermy. So, late in the day, the hair is great. If they can make it, then unmake it and get them to unlace it and see if you can lay out flat then and make it into something. And try that. Mm-hmm. Dave Grimes, hope to see you there. Kent, good evening. Buck 80, it sewing can be. I'm amazed that people don't know how to do basic sewing and repair. Thur, yes, I have AFib and I have high BP. I have never had a rhythmic heartbeat. I have always been AFib my whole life, and so to me, it's kind of natural. It's like boom, 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 boom. Drives them nuts when they're listening to it. So yeah, you can within reason. You know, the body never loses the ability. Just don't go too far. Start really, really slow. You may have to walk 2 blocks before you get up enough speed to kind of pick your pace up. But just, you know, be honest with yourself and see how you can do. All you can do is make some small improvements. Claymore steel. No, I do not. That open L I modified, I gave away at a gathering several years ago in Mississippi, where I put multiple blades. I ended up with 3 blades in that thing, with a short, a long, and a saw blade. And I need to do another open L video. Billy Bird, hello. Edgar, good evening. Very glad you made it tonight. Very well. I have a tool sewing machine that was made in 1892, I think it was, that I bought when I was 9 years old from an old lady. That's my sewing machine. I've sewed teepees, I've sewed clothes, tents, everything with that thing. Johnny Gonzalez, hello, Deep South, Texas. Yeah, Ken, my grandmother was stuck kind of raising me, and I was crippled. I had a cast on from the hip down until I turned 4 years old. I didn't learn to walk till I was just about to turn 5. And so she taught me how to sew. It was something to do. And so we'd sit there and make quilts and stuff. You know, sewing was something, sewing, cooking, and ironing. You know, she never had a boy to raise. She had been one of 6 sisters. She'd raised my mom, and then she'd raised my sister. So she'd treat me like other kids. Here, here's how to sew, boy. I learned to sew. I was the only kid in 1st grade that could make chicken and dumplings from scratch, including killing the chicken. Yeah, Gray Wolf, people can affect it, their heart rate and etc. If I think about it, I kind of get it into better rhythm. But if I kind of have to concentrate on it, I actually start counting in my head: 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, and that seems to make my heart like, what are you doing? And my heart will actually rhythm out a little bit better. So when the doc is listening, I try to do that. Billy Bird, glad to do it. Floyd, hello. Kenneth Gorham, if you only had a bow or crossbow, what type of arrow would you use, like wood, aluminum, or other? Well, I'm making them, and we're talking about long-term wood. Um, if I'm picking an arrow off the shelf, I like aluminum arrows, but once they ever warp, forget it. You know, you're out everything. Um, but as far as a manufacturer, when I was teaching Boy Scouts, I taught archery on how to make arrows. And so, you know, if I only could have one, it'd be wood arrows, because there's so much you can do with them. And really, you don't need as powerful a bow as you think. Most of the Native American bows were 30, 40 pound. That was it. It's placement, everything. Good evening, cow tipper. Tiny Titan, absolutely. You get out in them boots and break them in. Don't ever go on a camping thing with brand new gear of whatever you hadn't tried out. And foot gear, I wouldn't even consider it until I've got like a week wearing them to work. Yeah, Claymore steel, that'd be cool the way they lock in. That'd be nice. They'd make one. Edgar, yeah, telescopic batons are pretty effective at up close work. Yeah, I've known people that carried them for self-defense when they were walking on the Appalachian Trail. They put a flashlight carrier right here on the harness, put it in it, so it looked like a big mag light carrier or something. And so they could pull that out and use it. It's a ball mace is what it is. Does a good job. Les Moore, you should make an 18th century housewife. I know what a housewife is. When I was doing living history, we had them. I had a small cane tube that had needles in it with a cork. And then sewed around the outside of it was a piece of heavy wool that was sewed very tight to the outside of it, and it came out flat. And on that, I would sew a button, toggle, and have my other threads that I would take the thread and bundle it up and then put a single stitch through the material to sew it to it. So you roll it out like this, so you spiraled it up and tied it, and it was a housewife. So I have threads, buttons, needles, everything I needed right there in a little bitty small kit. Still got it somewhere around here. If I haven't given that to James Bender, I've given him a lot of my living history gear. Edgar, carbon arrow light, you get more speed. That's the trade-off. You get a whole lot more speed, but you don't get more penetration. And here's the way to express it. A ping pong ball, a golf ball. A ping pong ball and a golf ball can be accelerated to the same speed. But once it hits the target, the ping pong ball doesn't have mass, and so it sheds that very, very quickly. The golf ball, mass in motion, stays in motion until acted upon by another, penetrates a lot deeper because it's heavy. So a heavy arrow will penetrate a lot deeper than a light arrow, but a light arrow shoots flatter than a heavy arrow. So there's a balance point there. I had carbon arrows on a Oneida Eagle that was a ridiculously fast bow. It double cams and everything. I had the first year model with thing would launch at 600 feet per second. There were warnings all over that bow. You had to have an arm guard because aluminum arrow, you might get one or two shots, and that thing was like a curly cube. It can take the shot. They invented carbon fiber arrows basically for an Oneida Eagle. And the very next year, they got so many complaints and lawsuits, they dropped the power down to, I think at the end of it, they were only like 300 feet per second. They were half the power they had been when I got mine. And I could shoot clean through a pine tree that big. It would just harpoon that arrow clean through it. It would go all the way through, but it'd penetrate out of the side. It was screwed up the second it hit, though. But incredible speed of that thing, but speed, power, and I got carbon arrows. And you couldn't see the arrow at like 25, 30 yards from the bow. You shot and it was just gone. It was blurred. Your eyes couldn't track it and fly. You couldn't focus on it, so it was like 30, 40 yards down range. And you could lob an arrow 100 yards. I don't say hit a target, but you could sit on this end of the football field and stay close to a trash can at 100 yards. Pretty easy with that thing. It tore the fletchings off. It screwed stuff off. If you had an arrowhead that had a deployed wings on it where some little spring, it would blow it wide open on launch. And so it was not an accurate bow. It was meant for extreme big game at close range, like bear and things like that. And when he used it in the Rambo movie, Rambo 2, I think it was, where he used that Nite eagle in there in those copperhead ripper arrowheads, not explosive ones, the ones that got teeth on it. That was specifically made up for hunting grizzly in Alaska, where you're going to be over bait and probably 25 yards away. You had to have super penetration and super hit on it, and that's what that was for. I only had mine a couple of years, and then I got, man, you pull that sucker back and you back here, and if it goes wrong, that's when they told you had to have a metal arm guard. It would put shrapnel through your arm if that arrow gave up. You never, ever, ever fired one with a wooden arrow. It would just explode it. The arrow couldn't get out of the way in time. And yeah, back in the archery days. Johnny Gonzalez, have a good night. Billy Bird, well, I will see if I can have Bear over for another guest one night. And I have talked to a couple other people that I've been on their channels before, like Choir Boys with his knives and stuff like that. And I need to learn how to invite somebody else into this so that we can have discussions and stuff like that. So that's one of the many things I need to get off my butt and learn more about. Kent, I don't know. You got to remember that was back in the 80s. I don't know. I really don't. I just know that when they brought them out, and I remember they advertised 600 feet per second in the very first year of it. And within like 6 months of that bow hitting the market, suddenly that advertisement, you couldn't find it anymore. It disappeared out of the magazines and everything else. But you were getting write-ups in these archery man, this is the greatest thing ever invented, Of course, it'd come out in that movie, and everybody went, what kind of bow is this? It was kind of real odd for the day, for the double cams, high and low cams with flying wings on it. And then the very next year when they advertised, they were saying 350 feet per second. I'm like, wait a dang minute, it was just sick. They'd dial that puppy down, and the cams made cams smaller on it because they'd had too many people get hurt where they'd reared back that thing and they'd tried to shoot an arrow and it had gone through their arm or whatever. It was just, I remember the local archery range forbid you to use it on the range because it would blow clean through the backstop, and they didn't want somebody getting hurt. They were afraid when you shot, if that arrow just come apart. They were fiberglass arrows back in the days. You had wood, aluminum, and fiberglass arrows. And I have personally seen a fiberglass arrow just blow like confetti off of one. So people were just too much, too little, too dangerous. Yeah, that's more. I hear you, Mitch. I think I have seen that. Yeah, Claymore steel cane arrows were very popular down here in the South. Put a wooden hardwood plug in the beginning, one of the sections to hold the arrowhead, and a wooden plug in the back end to actually be the knock, and fletch it. Yeah, IKEA. I would love to have Grouch in a live stream. I don't know how I could rig that up, but I might have to load up my computer and haul it over to his house and hook into his internet and just set it up in his den. I'll think about that. Tennessee Smoke. Blackie, do you miss the historic reenactment events? Ever consider getting back into it? I do. You know, it was something that was very near and dear to my heart for 25 years, and I was truly lucky and got to be there in a really golden age, and where people were really serious about the historic stuff, and a lot of good memories. And one of the reasons I got out of it was everybody in my group was dying. You know, I was a baby of the group, and people were dying, and a lot of the people I looked up to, and people got old, and where I remember how everything had to be historically accurate. I mean, down to little bitty details. And then toward the end of it, when I was getting out of it, it got to where people were openly using cast iron hibachis because they were old and didn't want to build a fire anymore. They just want to pour charcoal out and heat up something to eat. And that kind of spoiled it a little bit for me, which I recognize they got older and they didn't want to have to do the effort. But yeah, I do miss it at times, especially on cold nights with a big old full moon and it's that crisp, clear night. Because I can remember laying on my back inside of a teepee and looking up and seeing a full moon up through the smoke inside of a teepee, and the shadow of the smoke dancing around inside the teepee. Yeah, I remember. Jeff Conley, yeah, I had thought about that, and I think about that about Dakota. Dakota lives about 2.5 hours from me, but we'll see. Maybe I'll go up and get on his. You know, we'll see. He'll invite me up. I'll get him on here. We'll figure a way to do it. We'll see. Well, thank you for saying out of the box wisdom. Really Big Monkey is a cool guy. He lives in northern Alabama, and I talked to him a couple of times, chatting back and forth. But we haven't, not ever done anything together. But I would be very happy to go up, spend a weekend or so, me and him hump around the woods and do stuff, tips, tricks, stuff. Would love it. He's a great guy. Very impressed with his work. Oh, those 250cc trail bikes, they do fairly well. The little fat tire ones, it's not really a mini bike, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I know. Ruben, guy, is part of the Southeastern Bushcraft Base Camp. He brings one of them and he puts around on dirt roads with them. Yeah. In fact, Grouch used to have one years ago. He'd put it in the bow of the canoe and he'd drive the truck to wherever and put his canoe in the river and put that in the front and canoe down, let in the canoe as ballast basically. And then when he got home or got to where he was going to be the stopping point, he'd get out, hide his canoe, and take the little thing and put all the way back to his truck to come back. That was his shuttle back and forth with one of them little bitty dirt bikes. So they'd get him around. Say good night to the little ones. Uncle Blackie says good night. Have a good night, Bear. Yeah, camping cage free. I know what you mean. Buckeye, good night. Andy Knight, good evening, South Georgia. How about a two gun like Ian and Carl did? Did it happen outside of Arizona? Yeah. Um, if you're thinking about what I'm thinking about, where the old swivel gun, two barrel, one rifle, one shotgun. The guy in the book of muzzleloader was Two Shoots Markham up here in Tennessee or Kentucky or whatever. He was kind of famous for it. And there were several of those floating around back in the day. It was flintlock where The top barrel was a rifle, and you could hit the catch and turn it over, and there was another pan that rotated up. It was a shotgun barrel. So you could have I want to say it was like a 28 gauge shotgun, like it'd be a 58, and a 50 caliber rifle out of there. But yeah, those actually did exist, and they'd be expensive. If you saw somebody holding that, you knew it was somebody that had money. Good night, Andy. Satan Hunter, good evening. Kent Aldridge, recommendations for a canvas TP. Uh, been 2 years out of it, but I had Panther Primitives, had one. And really the two choices are the Sioux, the Cheyenne style back in that day. The Sioux was more elongated and had a bigger bedroom, and the Cheyenne was more round. So of the two, it's your own personal choice. You can put them up with either the 2 or the 3 pole setup system. So you can put the Cheyenne style of poles onto the Sioux style teepee. And but I would look at Panther Primitives. See if they still make. Been too many years out. I can't tell you. Gray bearded green beret. He's still in the stuff, and he still camps in a teepee. I'd look him up. Gray bearded green beret. Look up him, and he'd be a better person to ask than me, because he's more current on it than I am. Kent, glad to do it. Floyd Smith. Only thing that we are in collaboration right now, we're talking about. I'm going to be doing a first aid class, basic idea first aid. We'll be doing a hammock class. There's going to be a class on how to pack your gear, organize both coolers, backpacks, etc. There's going to be tips and tricks for working with disabilities. James Bender is going to be doing one on fire lighting and things for people that don't have mobility, how you can sit on a stool and start a fire, different tricks and things like that. That's what we basically got at the moment. We're working it out. It's all going to be there. It's all coming together. But that's about all I got right now. Sorry. Large jar. Blackie, do you prefer the original Buck 110 or the more modern 110 with the pocket clip thumb? If you're looking for an everyday carry, I would say go with the more modern, little lighter weight. The Buck 110 is a fantastic knife. And if you're going to carry it in a sheath on your belt, yeah, go with it. But carrying it in the pocket, the Buck 110 is a brick. Know that personal experience. All of us boys my age had a hole in our pocket trying to work, because it just wears out a hole in a pair of jeans in about a week. But the lighter may be better for you as far as modern carry. But if you're wanting to carry it in a leather pouch on your belt, go with the old original. It'll never let you down. Recommendation for a sling for a hunting shotgun Mossberg 500 pump action. Get one of the ones that's like the neoprene rubber strip. Okay, about that long, about that wide, that attaches. It'll stay on your shoulder and won't want to slide down your shoulder. Many of your hunt clothes have got almost like a suede feel to be quiet. And because that, they are not a lot of friction intentionally. Well, you go to put a sling up here and the thing wants to start sliding. And if you're going to hold it, that's great. But you want your hands free to do something else. That's the reason I put the gun up on my shoulder. Get that neoprene or something. It'll grip you better and keep from sliding off so much. Good evening, Carlos. Union Pacific shirt? Nope, it's an Auburn shirt. Gordon, I believe it's just the 870 now. The Wingmaster was actually the old name for it. Right out of World War II, it's called the Wingmaster. And I know they use that up into the 80s. I don't know if they still use it, but I believe today it's just strictly the 870. Yeah, Jeff, they are not cheap. Oh, okay, Floyd, concerned about that. Um, it's going to very soon. What it is on our private thing that we're sharing back and forth. James is doing a pan of the area with a camera to show what it's going to look like and etc. The basic idea is we have an area. It's where he usually does at school. You pull your vehicle in. If you're tent camping or whatever, you can camp right next to your car. If you're camping in hammocks or something, there are trees and stuff to set in. We will have a common area, and the rest will be classes set up around the perimeter of it, depending on what we're doing. We'll do all the meal cooking and everything in the common area. But James is doing a little video of showing the area. And once we get that, gets that to me, I will publish that out, let y'all know what the site looks like. But that's the idea. Bring your camping gear, camp beside your vehicle if you got a tent or whatever. And if you need to camp in trees, there are trees there that you can set up hammocks in. We will have a porta potty for facilities like that. There ain't going to be showers I'm aware of, but there will be a porta potty of some kind there or such things like that. We'll have water and we will have firewood there. Good night, Kent. Have a safe trip. Lucky, what do you think about the Remington 1100 semi-auto 12 gauge? I got one that was my grandfather's and dad now. They're great shotguns. They really are. Um, they worked with that spring, and so here's a little trick. They were the earliest ones were only in 2 3/4. Later, they started doing it with 2 3/4 and 3. And that's when they started getting into a problem because the receivers weren't quite strong enough to handle the hot, really, really hot threes for duck hunters and stuff like that. And so they did a redesign, and that became the 1187. Okay, they still make the 1100. They're $1,000 a piece out of the Remington custom shop. But the spring up under there, Brownells you could contact me. I used to know the number. I don't anymore. Been out of it too many years. But there was a light and a heavy spring. And so if I was going to be using heavy turkey loads out of it, even though it's 2 3/4, I would put the heavy spring in it. And it was very reliable. Didn't beat up for nothing because that spring was heavier. On the other hand, if I was going to be shooting the really light little dove loads, I'd drop the light spring into it. Man, it'd run like new money, and didn't batter up the gun. They came shipped with a light spring in them. So when you would start shooting those heavy 3-inch, when they start coming out, it beat up, banged up the receivers on them. And so that's the reason they redesigned and came up with the 1187. And so really good shotguns, very collectible, very desirable. And for a family heirloom and stuff like that, great hunter gun. Great guns. Yeah, Edgar, something like that. Welcome to camping. Floyd Smith, do you have an email address that you can share with the public? Yes. Down in dirty woodscraft at gmail.com. Down in, letter N, dirty, one word altogether. Down and dirty Woods, WODS, craft@gmail.com. Yeah, Edgar, that's if you want one like one of those are actually decent little shotguns, especially for the price. They Kaufman's gun shop over here had a barrel of the tactical version of that shotgun that had pistol grip on it, and they were $200. So yeah, but the Auto 5 copy is pretty nice too. Randy, okay, what kind of kukri do I have? It is a Himalayan Imports Champura Panawal. And what that means is it's a chopper and it's a full tang. And you can tell by looking at the panel and see the two black things instead of a rat tail, which you just got to think there's two big things in the grip, pins. It's a Panawal full thing. If you'll go to Amazon and look up Kukri Afghan issue, and it'll come up and it'll look very similar to mine. It'll have a grip and it'll have those two big silver bolts right there and things. That is comparable to what I've got. Last time I looked a while back, they're around $100 now. Edgar Lewis, what do you think about the Taurus Judge? Fantastic close support gun for snakes, stuff like that. It's a great little 410 shotgun for up close. Yes, you can fire 45 on cold in it, but it don't really have rifling worth anything, and therefore don't think I want to plunk a 45 into it, be able to shoot 50 yards. That bullet will be doing like that. It's a 410 shotgun. So use it as a 410 for close range against predators, pests, things like that, up close, snakes. Great gun. Personal defense, shotgun up close is devastating. So yeah, great little gun like that. And so kind of bulky, but actually a very good woods companion. Gordon, I found a shovel online with a wood handle in the video. If it was using it as a machete and a hatchet, something that could replace three tools. If it's the one I'm thinking of, it can do okay, but like a cold steel shovel can chop small brush like an axe, like a hatchet. It'll dig and it'll do light stuff like that as well. Yeah, it can. It's just kind of awkward to carry sometimes because it's a shovel. But yeah, it can do, especially like for a cabin farmstead on a vehicle, or we're going in here to build something. Yeah, you can use it as a paddle too, an inflatable thing to paddle across stuff with. There's a lot of uses for that little bitty shovel. Outback Owl, good evening. Randy, glad to help. Okay, not a bad choice. Edgar. Oh yeah, Billy Bird. I've been a good friend of mine for many years. Often said that I was a virtual storehouse of useless information. So, good evening to just soon. Okay, just soon. Good evening. I was always a idea guy. I was in college and everything else. People would come up and go, "I've got this problem." Blah 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 blah, and I would usually be able to give an answer or give a direction. I have got some doozies of questions out of the blue before, and my blood brother Dewey Hobbs was going through college, and he was on his um, finals. Where you have to produce whatever. And it was like 3:30 in the morning, and my phone rang. And very few people have my number that can call me in those time of days and nights. But I wouldn't get ill in a hurry for waking me up or something like that. But David called me up and he said, "Man, I've been going 35 hours straight. My brain is fried. I have to have this for my turn in. I need a 2.5 inch diameter, half-inch depth, something concaved that I can use for a mold to make something. What can I use?" And I'm half asleep. And I went, "Have you got a spray can handy?" And I hear him go, "Yeah, look on the bottom." And I can hear him pick up a can and turn it around. He goes, "I love you, man." And hung up. The concave bottom of a spray paint can was almost perfectly exactly what I needed. Justin, I use a single paddle because I know how to J paddle. I can keep the paddling on one side and never bring it out and continuously paddle with it. And steering guide canoe with it without having to do this. Kayak twin paddle is great, but I can sit here and do this from either side and J stroke and control it just as well. And I've got one arm just kind of holding and one arm doing work. And then I can swap hands and do it on this side. If I'm doing a paddle, both arms are working the whole time. I can conserve better. Good night, Floyd. Gordon, yeah, most of the ones that are replacements for the Coleman lanterns do work really well. Outback Owl, not at this time. They go like that. In fact, I didn't even get to announce because there were so many people on the list that when I said, "Okay, here's your head up," they bought everything and had several people that had to be put on the next list. So it just we only 20 of the rucksacks in a run because they're so labor intensive to make, and then 50 haversacks, and they were just gone like that. Frontier Survival, hello. It'll kill. Good night. I recall reading books by Bradford Angler, but it don't ring a bell. I may have in my collection, or there may have some. I seem to recall he may have wrote the book about bass on a fly rod, I think, but I don't have any problem with them. It don't ring a bell with me. A recognized name, but sorry. I have not. I know what you're talking about when you're talking about Wakizashi, and but the CRDT I have not seen it yet. But the thing about it is for like troops in Afghanistan, tomahawks, wakizashis, something quick grab for a hand to hand, and what they were doing, being overrun in a position, street fighting or whatever, absolutely great idea. A big old knife that long, that wide is not easily concealed, and in the actual woods is not that great of a machete. A machete would be a better tool. So, although I know I'm going to tick off a friend of mine, he loves wakizashis and katanas and stuff like that. He'd rather, if he could walk down the street with 5 katanas stuck on him, he'd do it. You know, but he's a big, tall dude, and he can hide stuff up under a field jacket. So, but for what they're designed for, they do fantastic. But as a field tool, not so much. So when they bring out a lot of these, how about one of these? And I look at, looks great, be great collection. But to actually carry one, if we're openly carrying that, I'd rather tote a 12 gauge. You know? The Beast of Bray Road. Good night. Jeff Conley, I'm pretty sure you can still get them. What you got to do is go, Jeff Conley, go to Andy Smith at stitchgear.com and put it in an order with him. And he's a dealer for William. And so you can still get them. You just have to put them in there to get them. I won't because William is wrapped up, you know. And we had talked at one time about doing a run of blackbirds and stuff like that. And I've left it open to him. So if he gets a position where he could do a run of 20 or 30 blackbirds, I'll be happy to tell everybody about it. But don't know. You know, it's up to him. Hopefully I'll get to see him here in a couple months and be able to sit down and talk to him about it. Thayer, when you're in the woods, do you make a well for water all the time, or does it depend on the water source? It depends on the water source. If the water source is just all kind of scummy and everything else, I'll dig a coyote well, pre-filter it, if I have nothing else to do with. If the water is relatively clear, I'll take it, run it through a mesh or something to filter it, and then put it into a grail or whatever, or come back and boil it. But usually I dig a well when it's just green pond scum, you know. I'll dig down to the water table, come over here, dig down, and make a well about that deep, and give it 30, 40 minutes for the silt to settle back to the bottom, and then I'll dip out of that water, which is filtered a lot cleaner. Yeah, gray wolf, they have decent haversacks. Um, and Canterbury's got a decent haversack of similar material. It's like 20 something bucks. It don't have the features of mine, but it is a good haversack and it is made out of good material. So yeah, look around. You know, you don't have to buy just mine. I'm very proud of mine, but I'm never going to badmouth anybody else's gear. Um, what sets mine apart is all the extra bells and whistles on it. 30 years of toting a haversack and going to be able to take the strap loose and carry it in different configurations. That's where mine is, but they make really good haversacks. Jason at Campcraft makes a really good haversack. So I'd recommend either one of them. If you know, it's like it's just too much money for me. I understand. I'd recommend either one of them. For 30 bucks, you can get a really good haversack. I know what you're talking about, Spax. I have not used one, but I know what you're talking about. Mike B, good night. Woo. Yeah, $26 for shipping on a $21 item. Bushcraft Preacher, good evening. Yeah, T-Bore, that Murphy's pomade. It's beeswax and stuff, and you can waterproof with it. And it makes a decent candle. Canterbury years ago, oh good God, 10 plus years ago, did a video and showed how it could be used for various things. So he'd found it somewhere. And you can just, I don't know how he came up with it. Okay. But being married, you can just imagine that he's walking around Walmart with his wife Iris in the hair care or something. She's probably looking for something. He's probably sitting there and turn around and look and realize, ooh, beeswax. You know, I bet you that's how something like that be found. How I have found stuff with the wife, following her around shopping and just look up like, hey, wait a minute, and find something that might work for me. Well, we've been on an hour and 20 minutes. Let's give it about another 10 minutes and we're going to call it quits at an hour and a half. Not that I'm not enjoying the conversation, I truly am, but I got to clean up the kitchen tonight. You know what I mean? And making a spaghetti sauce for the wife, where she likes when I do it all of it from scratch for her, and I don't mind doing it. But dang, I dirty up a bunch of pots and everything else, and colanders and all kinds of stuff to make it up. So I'm gonna have to go in there and clean it up. Edgar, yes, the cold steel, smaller, kukri shaped machete is a very good piece of gear. Now it's a machete, but it's got all the attributes of a kukri. So that cut and everything, those curves, it's there. I have one. It rides in the door of my truck. That's to grab it, you know, and they're not that expensive. Just wrap that Criton handle with something so don't tear your hand up. That it's too aggressive. You go to chopping and it wants to rub blisters. I took fine cord and covered that handle up. But and the sheath is garbage. But it cuts the blade and it's fine for a truck, kukri, or whatever. They do very good. So, and in fact, that's what I recommend people that have never had a kukri but want to try one. Don't want to spend a lot of money on it. Go get you one of the cold steel, small. Not, they make a long one and a short one. Get the little one for about 20 something bucks, and use it. And if you really like the design, like the way it works, then step up and get one more expensive ones. And I still have and use it. And if we're doing a lot of machete work, that's the kukri I'm gonna pull to use. Even though I love my kukri, that super light machete with all the kukri geometry to it, fantastic for little old limbs and stuff. Whenever we're cleaning up brush in the spring or whatever, and opening areas up that's growed up a little bit around the house, around the farm, that's one of my favorite ones to pull out and do because it's light and it's fast and it's handy, and it gets its cutting power from the speed, not from the weight like the chopping ones. Blackie, how do you make your tomato sauce from scratch? Well, I take about 4 cans of stewed tomatoes, mash them down, and start the stewing process. And I add a few spices and stuff like that to it. And no, we're not doing a cookbook. You know. Good night, Bear. I'll be there early. I'll be there at 8 in the morning, Bear. I'll meet you at the shed. Yeah, those Condors make decent machetes. Kukri shaped ones, they actually do make a decent one. There, glad to help. You have a good night. Yeah. Well, you know, you can do that, and I have done it in the past for making spaghetti sauce and stuff. But I'm telling you, just use canned because you've got to wash them, clean them, put them on the low soak, cook it real slow. Mash it, get the stuff, and you don't want to go too far. It's balanced act. And most time I don't even mess with it. I'll just start out with basic made up tomato paste or made up tomato sauce and go from that. It saves about 12 steps doing that. And you really can't tell the difference when I get done. So why do all the extra steps? Yep, with broth. Here's a little trick. I like to take 2 or 3 aniseeds and put it in something I can retrieve it back out, a little linen bag, put it into the tomato and leave it in there about 20 minutes while it's simmering, and then fish it back out. And it takes a little of sharpness off of the tomato and makes it taste more like it's been roasted. And if you ever taken the tomatoes and actually put them in a blowtorch and burn the outside of them, you got roasted like you roast a pepper, roast a tomato, and then turn that into sauce. Yeah, lots of work. I'm not really sure it's even worth it, to be honest with you. All right, guys, let's call it quits for tonight. I greatly appreciate y'all and all the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Shane, glad to do it. Have a good night. And I'm going to go clean up the kitchen and check on the missus and see how she's doing. So until next week, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great night, guys.